There we go. Oh my
Got it.
gosh. Hi, David. Good to have you here. I'm going to mute you and I'm going to stop your video for now, but don't worry, you come back. All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. My name is Woody LaBounty.
And I'm David Gallagher.
David.
Wait, I'm just a support person in this. So
That's
this is
true.
Woody's show. I'm a guest.
I think you're an equal participant. David and I, for those of you who don't know, did a podcast for many years, Outside Lands San Francisco, which is still going as a podcast of the Western Neighborhoods Project. But we've talked together in digital format thousands of times. So we're old friends, and I think this will go pretty smoothly.
I think you can still listen to our episodes up to like episode 412 or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then Nicole, and I come back for one or two, and maybe you have two, David. But let's start our show tonight. Real quick, just why we're doing this show. I started this thing in June called San Francisco Story, and this is totally a personal, fun project of mine in which I send out a weekly email. It comes out on Wednesdays about some element of San Francisco history, something. Usually it's something kind of goofy or fun because that's just what I like. But sometimes it's a little more serious. They're usually short and they have a lot of photos. Hey, can't get better than that. So go to sanfranciscostory.com, click subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And then as part of it, I thought it'd be fun if we did events every now and then. So I have, this is the first one. I think we're going to alternate between a virtual event so people who are out of town can participate, and then the next month do something more in person. So in October, I'm going to lead a little history walk of the cemeteries that used to be around Lone Mountain, where UCSF is, USF, excuse me, is today, and a lot of housing developments. But there's a lot of stuff still from the cemetery to be seen. So put that on your calendar, and I'll share some more news in the next few days about how to sign up for that. All right, David, are you ready to start this show?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Okay, let's
go.
So, David, I look at this photo as our inspiration of why we're doing this show. It was taken by Horace Chaffee, who was the photographer for the San Francisco Department of Public Works. And this is what I'm talking about, institutional photos. Why is Horace Chaffee taking this photo, David? Why is he doing this?
So what we're looking at, as you can see, is we're looking across 2nd Street on Harrison, and pretty much what the Department of Public Works would do would take pictures of streets that were planned to be improved or modified in some way. And so you can see here that Harrison Street is unpaved. It's got one little streetcar line running up it and a big hill. And so they were going to just improve this. This is the before picture, I believe.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not the after picture. And what they would do is they would take a before picture of a place that needed improvement, and then they would photograph it afterwards.
Right,
but work was done.
But often, and this is what is doing in the middle, photobombing this documentary photograph, right? So,
yeah.
And we look at him. I mean, it really drew our attention when we scanned it because he has a flu mask, I think, around his neck that he pulled down. It's 1919, so we had a different pandemic going on then. And I remember Greg Garr would see this photo and we'd go, "Oh, look at this cute kid." And Greg would say, "He's dead now." That was a long time ago. But it made us think a lot about what else can we see in some of these photos, you know, on the sides or in the background, and what does it speak about different aspects of San Francisco history or how people used to live. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look through a lot of these institutional photos and sort of see the things that David and I have noticed over the years around the edges. And let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about when we say institutional photos. So different agencies and private companies were using photography in the early 20th century, as David said, to document their work. This is a shot from the Recreation and Parks Department. They did this a lot. And a lot of them are pretty boring. I mean, in the sense that it's like, here they are showing Larson Park between 19th Avenue and 20th Avenue, and the improvements and the grading that's going on there in the Sunset / Parkside. And unless you live in one of these houses, this is not a thrilling photo of San Francisco history. But then occasionally they would take photos that are more interesting and have a lot of character. What's going on here? What's this Parks Department photo about, David?
This one seems to be a promotional photo talking about, well, it's all right there, the groundbreaking at McLaren Park. And who did the groundbreaking? Well, John McLaren himself.
Good idea. They hitched him up here to a plow.
Yeah,
So
and so
there's personalities that show up in this, but I prefer sort of like the more candid people on the edges than these publicity shots. But Recon Park did this. This is a United Railroads photo. United Railroads was the transit company that ran a lot of the streetcar lines in the city before successor organizations bought them, and then eventually MUNI, Municipal Railway, took over what was left. So David, what is this documenting? This incredibly boring photo. What is this documenting?
Well, so I think what this is documenting is a construction site for a new sort of a little car barn or some facility on, I believe it's on Pacific. Yeah, there it is, Pacific near Polk,
Mhm.
and was next door to a firehouse actually. And yeah, it's like, huh,
Yeah,
sand. There's a guy, there's a date. One of the great things about the United Railroads pictures later, there's quite a few. They started taking pictures around 1904 to document their work, and they didn't put the dates on the negatives, on these big glass negatives, until a little bit later. But once they did, it's great because we can see the exact day it was taken, and that number is logged somewhere, and we can look up the information about that too. But this one, it's like, yeah, I scanned this and I said, oh, is this important? Is this an important picture? Do we care? But wait, there's something really kind of interesting on the side there.
yeah, graffiti by children who are writing little drawings of themselves and their names above it. And this is the sort of little tidbit or aspect of these photos that I think make them come alive for us, right? Is these little aspects of San Francisco life. And we're going to talk a lot about kids in the city because they basically dominate a lot of these photos. Here's one that's a Department of Public Works photo. And again, we're documenting something. This is at 17th Street and Pond. I believe this is where the health center is there today,
Yeah.
kind of in the Castro. And this is not the health center at the time. This is some sort of powerhouse, looks like. I'm not sure what for. I don't know, David, if you did any research on what's in
I
there.
didn't. I didn't
But
look it up.
we like this photo because, again, more graffiti. It's down here. It says something like BM loves somebody else. And I just saw this and I was like, I hope whoever the person this was intended for passed this powerhouse and saw they were this avowal of dedication.
But that
And
is,
then,
that's the sort of thing that we find when we look close,
yeah, so we talked about the Parks Department and the Department of Public Works and United Railroads. And then the assessor recorder is another agency that took a lot of photos. And mostly the assessor takes the photos because there's some change going on to the building and they're documenting it because it's going to be assessed at a different rate and a tax base or whatever it might be. They're just documenting essentially work. So I think this one at 17th Avenue and Taraval, which is in the park site, it looks almost exactly the same today. In 1951, they're documenting, I think, the addition of this storefront maybe on the bottom floor.
Yeah.
But I love here in the window. Why are you taking a picture of my house?
Exactly. And that's that's the other thing. It's like, the places that these people, these photographers took pictures were, just on the streets, documenting what they had been contracted to document. And the residents and the people around, often out in the neighborhoods, were curious about, hey, what's going on with this person setting up a big old camera or
Yeah.
standing in the middle of the intersection snapping a picture of my house. And I've
Yeah. 'Cause
experienced that myself,
well, it's not
taking
like
morning
holding up a
pictures of
phone like
things.
yeah, it's not like holding up a phone like today. And let's talk about one other reason why these photos are taken. This is this. Tell me a little bit about this photo, David, and why you
This
like it, and why you suddenly decided not to like it as much.
this was one of our favorite pictures at Western Neighborhoods Project, and there's a whole series that show this old right of way through Golden Gate Park. So I mean, we can orient it pretty easily. There's the windmill on the left there, and then the life-saving station on the right. And this route through Golden Gate Park is well documented. The Park and Ocean Railway, right? Um,
Yeah,
and and so we like to see that. But we're like, why did they take this picture? Why is this fellow leaning out like that? And it turns out that another reason that United Railroads would take pictures, they would take pictures of equipment and of buildings they were working on, and track improvements, that sort of thing. But they also made a point of documenting accident locations for their accident reports. And that is what this picture refers to.
yes. It was basically a young woman who was watching a balloon ascension and leaned out of the car to look up, and her hit her head on the pole as the streetcar was moving. And tragically, she died, as well as the aerialist, the aeronaut in the balloon ascension, also crashed and died. So it was a crazy day where two people perished. And this pretty prosaic photo, which is essentially taken right behind where the beach chalet is today, is the United Railroads documenting the accident and kind of doing a little investigation work. So we see a lot of these, they are accident reports, and sometimes they're not obvious like that one, and sometimes they're very obvious like this one. This is Arguello and Lake in the Richmond district, and we're looking at St. John's Church, which is still there and looks very much like this today on the southwest corner. But if we zero in here, we could see there was a streetcar that didn't quite make the turn there, coming down the hill probably, and ran into the side of St. John's. So we have this trio of boys. One of them is a little newspaper seller with a tie and a dog, and the cornerstone dislodged from the church. And this guy in the white hat who's probably waiting for a streetcar, you think, David, or I
Yeah,
don't know, being judged by the boys.
I'm not sure the streetcar is coming anytime soon.
Yeah. And this guy on the far right with the cigar and the big coat, I think he actually probably works for the United Railroads and is in charge out there. Maybe he's an insurance guy or the adjuster or something like that.
Right.
Uh,
And
but
a
what do we see in the
detail,
background there? Yeah.
yeah, we can see in the background the Presidio Terrace, and a sign there, just a snippet of a sign that shows more lots for sale, I believe, in Presidio Terrace. And that's the spot where Temple Emmanuel would be constructed, I believe, right?
Right. Yep. Yep. All right. Now here's one that again, I think you look at it first, and you're like, this is a cool photo. But there's more to the story. So this is San Bruno Avenue, which I'll tell you where that actually is today, and Oakdale, which you might know, in 1916. And it's another accident report. There were a number of accidents in this intersection, by the way, if you look through the records. But I look at this photo, it's a very rural time in this part of San Francisco. And first thing I notice is this building up on the hill where they had to use a bunch of planks to actually get up to it. I think probably once they had graded the road and improved it. You can see here on the lower left. And a lot of windows are being broken on the side of it. But really, that is not the cool part of this picture. This unassuming building over here is, and it is the only thing in this shot I think that's still there today, because what we're really looking at is Bayshore Boulevard. And that's what San Bruno was then. And that building is there today on the corner of Oakdale. It is the old Clam House, which is, I think, open again. I think I've heard it's back open after being closed for a while.
Yeah, I believe it just reopened.
Yeah. And this is a classic old building. You may have eaten there, and it proudly says it started in 1863. Um, but if you look at another accident report from maybe 3 years earlier, 1913, looking the other direction, looking north, we can see the building, and it looks pretty darn new in 1913. It's in great shape, actually. And I think this building probably does date from really early 20th century rather than 1863.
Yeah,
There's some good stuff in this photo, though, huh, David?
there's a lot of research stuff. Well, for one thing, there's a horse trough out in front on the
Yeah.
left there, uh, beer signs, and you can almost read the owner's name. We think it was, and this is one that I'm not sure if it's because of the type of film that was used, or maybe they had painted over the old owner's name, which was Zerfluh, right? Zerfluh. That
I
was,
think you're just
that's
making
who
that up,
owned that.
David.
That's who owned that place. So it's filled with genealogical sort of research tips there.
I love this, also this little gig in the front with the horse. And I always assumed that was some guy going up the road, but if we zero in on it, it's a woman with the behind the reins there, holding the reins. And I don't know if you can see, there's a little kid looking out underneath the horse's head there. They're paused and must be posing for the photographer.
It's
Um,
very
but
curious, right? I mean, I wonder if that's family to the photographer, which was John Henry Mentz, by the way, but definitely they're posed there and the kid is peeking through.
yeah, here's yet another accident happened in 1915. You can see the old Clam House is the Oakdale Bar, and we can kind of zero in a few years later and see that a different ad, but advertising Rainier beer, and Charles Yeager is the owner. But what I love is this little tiny patch of sidewalk. It's like probably the only sidewalk in the area. There is a fire hydrant you can't see behind the power pole there, so it's just like the Clam House gets its own sidewalk. And you can see in the concrete there, you actually have the imprinted street names, which this was not that long after they started doing that.
Right. I mean, that's the story, right? It's before 1906 when the entire city core burned down. Nobody knew where they were because there were no street signs or anything, and that's when those imprinted street names in the sidewalks were introduced.
Yeah. All right, now let's get into how we use these for a little research and how some of these details on the edges help us. This is Haight Street looking east on just past Fillmore. Not too long after the earthquake and fire, we're talking about December 1906. And it used to be a cable car line that ran on Haight Street, but now they're pulling the cable out and they're going to have this be an electric streetcar line. So that's what we're documenting here, the work on the tracks on the street. But over here on the businesses of the 400 block of Haight Street, what do we find?
Well, we find shoe repairing by machinery,
Yeah.
a little shoe repair shop. And again, it's this type of film where different colors didn't show up. But if we look very close, we can see that it says between the 473s, it says Gallagher Brothers.
Any relation?
This is it's my great grandfather's shop. And
There's
that's
the
my,
inside.
and I have it, this is my picture. That's the inside of the shop. You had mentioned that one of the features on the sign was shoes repaired while you wait,
Yeah.
done while you
75
wait.
cents for a
And
soul.
my dad loved this picture of his father and his grandfather because on the right on that bench, there's a bunch of leather slippers that the that the customers would wear while they were getting their shoes fixed.
Hmm.
That smiley kid in the left, that's my grandfather.
He looks like you. I think I see that. I totally see that. And I don't know what the bedsteads are doing there on the street. It's a little strange. But on the
Yeah.
opposite side, these buildings, some of them are still there for sure. I love this locksmith with the key sign here. And I think you can get a set of keys that says for 23 cents, which is pretty good. This is about where Nikki's Bar is, if anybody knows that part of Haight Street. And some of these Victorians you see with the details on the facade, they're still there. Some of them have been plastered over. Some of them have stores in front and are still relatively intact. Okay, let's move over back to the Mission here. We're going to go 22nd Street and Bartlett, looking west, 1913. And I think we're looking at street work here.
Woody,
If you
this
look
is
over here on the side,
Yeah, they're doing a history talk.
yeah,
we
let's see if I can
mute
get-
Wendy.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah.
All
There we
right.
go.
Thanks
This
for
is-
coming, Wendy.
How we doing here? We're
We're
okay, we're
good.
back.
Yeah.
So
What are we looking at?
this is 22nd Street, as you said, and this is kind of the Woody, this is the David Gallagher tour,
Uh-huh.
family tour. On the left, on the right there is the other brother of Gallagher brothers, my great grand uncle, who was my great grandfather's brother. They had one shop on Market Street that were burned out during in the fire, and then after the fire they decided to split up and have two shops.
Hmm.
So
I love the cleaner that lived next to them here or worked next to him, F. Pierce, and you see his little delivery van or cart here. And most of
Yeah.
these houses, most of these buildings are gone today. But if you look on the other side of 22nd, let's see. Some of these buildings are still there. And I love this little like trash can, this little city trash can, or maybe you put hot ashes in it. We see a couple of those in these photos.
I
But what's
think it
kind of
was-
neat is, yeah, go ahead.
I think it was for like coal ash or
Yeah, I
something.
think it
You
was
know,
too
all the
hot, something
houses
hot.
were heated by coal.
But I love, you see this Victorian is being raised. They've got it like propped up here because they're going to add a storefront in here. And here it is today. You got a Chinese restaurant right here on the bottom of that building. And this one has had a little stucco job on the facade, unfortunately, but still there today. All right, the other thing I love about the old photos is to sort of see how the city's infrastructure grew and changed, especially in reconstruction and after the earthquake. Earthquake and fire burns out the core in 1906. Outlying neighborhoods like the Richmond district, suddenly are booming with people, but they're not quite ready infrastructure-wise. So here's California Street. We're looking west from 17th Avenue, and you see the streetcar poles are in, but the grading and the actual street work and sidewalks are not ready, as you can tell. But what's great is this building on the left here is a pretty rare and interesting structure. It is an earthquake refugee cottage that had been moved there probably from Camp Richmond, which is where Park Presidio Boulevard is today. And after the 1906 earthquake, they had built 5,600 and something of these cottages for the refugees in the parks. And when they closed the camps in the parks, people took the cottages to empty lots, a lot of them in the Richmond, other parts of town, and used them as starter homes. So that's what we see here. It's kind of neat to have it in this picture.
Yeah.
And then I also like
definitely,
this- yeah.
definitely totally recognizable.
Yeah, they definitely have a look. I also love in the center distance, this new housing, these little townhouses. They're not there today with the little front steps. And it just goes to show how these first sort of ways to figure out how to house all these displaced people after the earthquake and the different structures that were being put up.
What's also interesting in that is that the Richmond district gained a whole lot of residents in the camp, right? And so builders probably saw an opportunity to keep people in this neighborhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, now we'll go something that I think this is a pretty recognizable shot in 1915. We're looking west on 16th Street. And again, foreground is these tracks. That's what they're, there's an accident here, but they're basically showing the site of the accident. But then if you look over here on the left, here's something kind of recognizable, right, David?
Yeah, that's the Basilica for Mission Dolores being built under construction, right?
Mhm. Yeah, the mission would just be beyond this. And I love the down here in the bottom right corner. This is going to kick off our kids section. Are these two kids on a little coaster they made? It looks like, and they're just hurtling down 16th Street.
Yeah, that's my favorite detail of this one. When I saw those guys, I was like, okay, yeah, there.
I love it.
That's
On the
something.
other side of the street, we have another one of these little cans, and we have this trio of very mysterious people looking again at the photographer, like, what are you doing? The gate on the right is for the Holy Family Day School, which there's a building there today that still, I think, has the same name, but it was a Catholic charity, essentially.
Again, we talked briefly about the lady looking out her window on Taravel,
Mhm.
and in the 50s they were shooting 4x5 with a speed graphic camera, handheld camera, but Mance was shooting 6x9-inch glass negatives, great big thing with a great big camera that had to be set up in the middle of the street. So it's no surprise that every picture has somebody going, what the
What
heck
is going
is
on
going
there? Yeah.
on with this guy?
Yeah. Here we have another accident report looking west. This is in the Richmond. Golden Gate Park would be just on the left, and we're on Fulton Street at 10th Avenue. But I use these photos a lot for this. These two buildings are still there today, and I like to kind of compare and see how they might have changed or how they could be restored even. And so if you look at them, they're in pretty good shape today. They are a little different in that they've lost their balustrades, those little decorative bits of railing on the parapet. And you can see the house over here on the right has them too. We'll look at that closer again in a sec. But the stars of this picture have to be these two kids, right?
Yeah, with their boats waiting for the streetcar to take them down to Spreckles Lake, which was built for model boating, of course. And yeah, that is what I assume is going on in this one.
Yeah, and Buster Keaton in the background there, it looks like. And then over here on the right side, we got another kid who's got skates on and a little tricycle sort of vehicle. But I was interested again in the architecture of looking at this house on 10th Avenue. And again, that decorative balustrade, same builder, you could tell at the top roof line. Building still there today. Again, lost the balustrade, but you can really see how they created this landing, this curved landing. Pretty cool. So, all right. Now, David, I think the whole real premise of this show is to show people a photo that on first blush is incredibly boring. And then you look deeper and you're just blown away by the sides and the details in
This one has horse poo in it, so that's interesting.
No, it gets better than that. So this is 1909, right? A couple years after the earthquake. We're in the Western Addition. We're looking west on McAllister Street. This is where the 5 Fulton runs today, right?
Right.
And we're looking towards Broderick. So let's zoom in on some of this. Way off in the distance, which we're able to do and get a lot of clarity. We'll explain in a second. What do we see at the end of McAllister?
Well, I'll just read the slide. It says we see the Masonic Cemetery.
Well, it's
Which was-
right. We actually do. This is a giant cemetery that is where essentially the USF baseball field is today. That's what we'd be looking at, right into the outfield of the University of San Francisco baseball field. And this was a number of 4 big cemeteries. This was one of 4 big cemeteries around Lone Mountain that were around in most of the end of the 19th century and a good 30, 40 years of the 20th. This is the arrow is pretty much the way we're looking towards Masonic Cemetery. And whoops. And then on the left here, you could see on the street side, these buildings, most of them are actually still there today. I love these ads, these giant posters that have been pasted up on the fence.
Yeah, really wish we had color pictures because that those were just a riot of color.
Mm-hmm. This building, I just love its little front bay with a incredibly interesting roof at 1773 McAllister, still there today. And these other ones, even though they may have lost the decorative railing or again their balustrades, they're still standing there at the corner. On the other side, those two buildings in the background on Baker, the one on the right is still there. It's lost some of its details. That gabled one in the center lost its roof. It's still there, but it has a flat roof.
Hmm.
But the cool thing on this side of the street are these kids and a teacher, it looks like. Where is this, David? Do you know?
I don't. It's a school, right?
It is. It was called Fremont School at the time. It was a public school there. And you could
School.
see the little balconies and the columns. This is another institutional image. This is a DPW, Department of Public Works image of Fremont School. And if you go back, you can see the little post there of the school.
Right. Was it all girls?
I know. At first I thought it might have been an all-girls school, but no, it was just a public school. There's just a lot of girls in the shot, I guess.
Hmm.
All right, now David, I don't know how this can be improved by the details. It's just a billboard, although, and I really do think coveralls, keep kids clean, all Ks is a bad marketing plan, but there is something hidden in this little view of the billboards.
Wait, I want to back up one sec.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're going to see some good things about coveralls and kids who need to keep clean, right? I mean, it's not a bad marketing ad at all. Right next to the
Okay.
beer too. But yeah, you got to look close to find something very curious.
Yeah, and that's down here. And again, this is about the size of negative you're talking about, David. These glass plate negatives, they allow you to really get a lot of amazing detail. And way down there, we have a little poster. It's basically a political booster poster for President Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah,
just
can I read it? It
Yeah, go ahead.
says, America stands serene and confident, mighty and proud, a temple of peace and liberty in a world aflame. Think what this means to you and yours. Let's stand by President Wilson, who with honor has kept us out of war.
Wham, wham.
It's,
We
yeah.
went into the war right after that. Yeah. All right. I think we got to go back to the kids again, because I think this photo, which is not, again, showing anything remarkably historic, really gives the sense of how there was a kid on every corner of every San Francisco street in ye olden days. This is 21st and Hampshire in 1951. And there's a kid down here who looks like he might be 3 or 4 years old. And there is not an adult within, I don't know, 2 blocks of this kid.
Yeah. I think mom said, you go down there and hug that lamppost, and that's it. That's
And when I'm done shopping, I'll come get you.
Stay right here.
So we're going to do like a Where's Waldo Spot the Kid. This is Sacramento Street between Steiner and Pierce. Most of the buildings on the left are actually still there today. On the right, the one that's closest to us on the right is still there. A lot of the others in the distance have been replaced by apartment buildings. But if we zero in here on the right, another kid.
And what I like, and this is one that I think Jeremy pointed out to me a while back, was that the kid has a toy that's shaped like a streetcar.
Yeah.
There's a little streetcar toy, and he's living, of course, on the streetcar line and saw the real streetcars go by, and he got
He's
one. It's
probably
like
one of
a
those-
future Fomer of America.
He's probably a little rail fan waiting for the streetcar to come by. And not just showing kids because they're cute, but I think they really talk a lot about sort of the different socioeconomic situations of different neighborhoods. Here we are on Potrero Hill at DeHaro and 21st in 1918. And of course, we're documenting this street issue going on here. But if we zero in, these kids, they need those clean coveralls, especially that little boy on the left who's really filthy. But you can tell they're more the working class kids, I think. And
Yeah.
this boy has, I think, what looks like a roller skate on one foot. And he must have shared the other skate with someone else, or that's what he found.
It really shows some of the economic issues a little bit in the
Mhm.
different neighborhoods.
And then here we are. We're just off the Market Street extension out of Castro. And what's going on in this photo, David? What are they documenting here?
So this is 1919. The Twin Peaks Tunnel had just been completed the year before, and what we're looking at is the covered ditch. That first part of the Twin Peaks Tunnel was a cut and cover sort of thing. So they built it. They dug this huge ditch from 17th and Castro straight through the blocks to about where Story Avenue is today. And that's what we're looking at right now. I'm not sure exactly what they're documenting other than possibly the route of the extension of Market Street, which didn't happen for a little bit later.
Yeah. We have these kids. You have a couple girls in this photo, which is nice. And then up there at Tank Hill with the tank on the top, you can see the water tank in the background. And I love the laundry hanging. You see a lot of photos with laundry hanging. And but these two buildings in the center are still there today. This is on Ord Street, right on, well, you can see it they barely survived the Market Street extension going by them.
Right.
All right, now we know why they're taking these photos, all right? So the Department of Public Works, they're here on the north side of Bernal Heights on Hampshire and Peralta in 1920. And you can tell what they're taking a photo of, David. This road needs a little work, it looks
It
like
needs
to me.
improvement. Yeah. Clearly,
Yeah,
there's a lot of
I was a
erosion
little
going on.
surprised. Yeah, I was a little surprised how well dressed these kids are in Bernal Heights, but that boy on the right is definitely a fashion model. Um, and uh, and these houses, again, architecture is a big interest of mine in these old photos, are pretty much there today. You can see what they end up doing. They put a retaining wall in, and the houses, like I said, are pretty intact. That yellow one has had a lot of work on it.
Right.
But this is what they're trying to document is this road work. And we just happen to get the bonus kids who
I
photobomb
was
the photo.
curious about that picture. I was like, are they dressed for Sunday, for church or something? And this was a Wednesday. So
Oh,
it's a mystery why
why
they're
they're so well dressed.
so
Yeah, maybe
dressed up.
they seem well dressed to us. All right, now we're in Noe Valley. We're looking up Valley Street towards the west from Castro. And this is a dead end at the time, but you could tell it's more hillside than road. And it's a dead end today. They were showing that they were going to put a real street in here. Lots of kids. These houses are still there today, although you can see the white one has this little cool inset bay window on the front floor. I mean, the first floor there. It has been lost, and the building is barely what it used to be. The other house looks pretty good, though. It has the same sort of covered walkway going in and is in pretty intact. But I don't like this horizontal board thing they've been doing in the city the last 20 years, David.
Yeah.
10 years.
Can we back up and look at this? So you'd almost want to say, why in the world is there a row of houses on this street, right?
Yeah, why?
What, the grid, the street grid was just overlaid across the entire city, which is why we have these steep streets without regard to the topography, and lots were sold and buildings were built on these supposed, paper streets. We knew where the street was, but even though that it didn't even exist, right?
Yeah. I feel sorry for these women who I think are probably walking to shop or going to the Jade Church line or something, but it's a long walk down the hill.
Yeah.
And then we have our gang here hanging out in the corner.
No. Hey.
Let's see, who's that?
Mute yourself.
All right, we're getting close here. We're going down the hill from Noe Valley a little, and this is 1951. The assessor's taking a photo, I think, of the Transite siding that's going on that center building. But I like to look at this photo just to show how a very simple building, it gains a lot by having these sort of decorative windows and garage. Now they don't have it, and it just kind of loses a lot of its character. But what's cool about this photo is the people again. I don't know, maybe I'm making up a soap opera here, but I do feel like these two women are commiserating about tough times. And this kid, I think he's eating beans out of a can, David.
He's been banished to the gutter by his mom.
All right, this building has not changed hardly at all, David. It's at 19th Street and Guerrero, but it has details that really speak a lot to the Mission District in 1951. So, but first of all, let's see what it looks like today. Instead of a little grocery store, it's a place called Dolores Outpost where you can get coffee.
Building itself has gotten a little bit of a change, right? I mean, it's got that red tile, maybe the tile's red and all, it looks like it's all painted white. There's some other
Yeah.
details along the top cornices, but
Yeah. But these guys, that's you and me, David, when we're old, sitting on crates talking on the corner.
I think
Um,
it's not too far from now, Woody. Be careful.
But what about the business? What does the business tell you, David?
The business, tells me that, and in 1951, we had a lot of Mission District pictures of businesses along 24th Street and Guerrero and everything. And what we see is a wide range of ethnicities and a real melting pot in the neighborhood, including the old Irish businesses, but also newer Latino businesses. And this one, Habib, too. And I want to say that neon sign there was only recently removed. I'm sad that it was removed, but I think it was up there until just a couple years ago.
I love that it's Habib's Groceteria.
Groceteria, come
I
on.
can't say it. I can't say it. On the left side of the photo is this garage, and every neighborhood used to have garages, but this was just a great design. I just love this sort of Art Deco design it used to have. That building is pretty much the only one gone from this photo, but I love that upper treatment, you might say. All right, David, now we're really getting out here. This is 9th Street south of Market near Brannan in 1951. And I just want to point out, David at first had trouble figuring out where this was, and we'll explain why that was a problem. But today, this is what it looks like, which is kind of an interesting building. There's a lot of glass brick going on there.
Do they have sandwiches there?
I don't think so, but Webb's Sandwich Shop, if we look over here to the left, there's very few things in this photo that's identifiable, but this tower is still there south of Market. It's 888 Brannan. It's the headquarters of Airbnb now. It was at the time a paper goods concern. I love this phone booth and the newspaper rack.
And I'll point out that there were railroads crisscrossing all through that area. Now the freeways kind of go right near there.
So David, how did you identify where this was eventually?
When I looked close, I found that it had the exact address there, so it made it pretty easy.
Above the four men. I love these guys.
It made it easier because still, you can have an address like that and that address doesn't exist. If I put in 633 9th Street, I don't think it will get me close, but I still couldn't orient it so that tower was important to understand what I was looking at and which direction we were looking. But really, it's the details that you see in this. We see the sandwich board with every kind of thing, cold plate 70 cents, coffee 10 cents, and then the workers, the people who show up, 2 guys in suits and 2 guys kind of in working man clothes. So
yeah, it just kind of speaks to a time south of Market. All right, another favorite of mine. I talked about this on Twitter, and I'll share our Twitter handles at the end if you want to follow David or I. I got a little more detail into this in the Twitter thread, but this is 1911. We're in the Western Addition. We're on Ellis Street looking west across the Visadero. And again, one of these things where we look off into the distance of this glass plate negative and we see another cemetery. And this is the Calvary Cemetery, which was the Catholic cemetery that basically ran from Broderick over the hill to Masonic. And by the way, if you ever wondered why Masonic, the street was called Masonic, it's because of the Masonic cemetery.
Yeah.
But the left side here, great details, M. Weinberg and Company, Ladies Tailors, that building is gone. I love this kid. He's on a little tricycle like we saw in the other photo.
It's the same kind of tricycle, same kind of pedal tricycle, which is
Yeah.
really kind of curious. Now I want to do some research and find one of those. Those are
I know.
kind of
I
cool.
didn't know anything about them, but we started doing this work and I kept coming across them. They were big around that time. But a lot of these buildings up the hill are still there, including this cute cottage here, 2083 Ellis, which unfortunately earlier this year had a proposal to demolish it and build a larger structure, which I've been fighting. There's a lot of room on that lot to add housing, but don't tear down this cute little cottage is what I say. On the other side of the street, love this detail on the bay window, David. This crazy design, I guess, is some kind of ceramic, I'm thinking, that's pasted on there. It's really beautiful.
It's a plaster mold
Semi-plaster,
sort of
that's what I
thing,
meant. Yeah.
which really did not survive long, through the years. I think it's
Yeah.
also interesting here that we have another Ladies Tailor. We're on the historic Ladies Tailor district on
I
this
guess
corner.
this building is gone, although it looks pretty new here in 1911. And that, I think, is a motorman or a streetcar employee standing there next to a light post, a lamp post, very common in San Francisco at the time. Let's see if I can get you a little detail of that. And David, this, I'm not going to reveal it now, but I think there's still one of these lamp posts standing in San Francisco.
On a street corner?
Yep, stay
In
tuned.
an original location?
No, probably not, but I'll tell you more about it. But see how they used to have the actual street signs as part
Yeah.
of the lamppost.
So this is a gas lamp. There's a,
Mhm.
and you used to have to, the lamplighter would come through. My dad talked about remembering the lamplighter as a small child. So into the 20s, late 20s even, they were still lighting the lamps. And bring that back up, bring that back. We see here that it had the street names written on them. These were all downtown too. And so when the earthquake and fire came, and they're made of glass, all of those were destroyed. And one thing that people have been shocked by lately is the spelling of Divisadero.
Mhm.
And I think it's an anglicization of the pronunciation, where it's like Divisadero.
Yeah,
Or
definitely you see on old maps, they'll spell it with an E.
yeah.
All right, a few more, and then we'll get to some talking here. This is the corner of 24th and San Bruno, and it looks similar today, but you can see there have been some changes. I feel really bad for this corner building, really, I do.
Thank you.
You
'Cause
just wanted-
it's transite sided and then concrete on the bottom, and has those glass bricks, which I'm sure are nice from the inside, but blah.
And it lost its corner entrance, which had two entrances, really. It had a bar on one side and a barber shop on the other side of the corner entrance.
And a kind of a quiet barber shop. It's funny, at this point, when in 1951, when this was taken, 24th Street continued all the way up the hill, all the way up
Mhm.
Potrero Hill, and was really kind of a connection between the Mission District and Potrero Hill. And now, of course, it's a real backwater. There's a retaining
cut
wall, a sound wall, and the Highway 101 goes right through, just
Yeah.
half a block from this spot.
Yeah, and we have kids on a tricycle again, another tricycle shot. All right, this
I had
is one of the.
did you have a tricycle when you were
I did.
when you were a kid?
I have a very sad story about my tricycle I'll share later. This is a very rich photo, Fillmore Street, looking north on across Sutter. And the sad thing about this photo in 1920 is the only thing surviving from this photo is this building on the corner. And maybe a little piece of another one you can see. But all of this was basically demolished or taken out but in World War II and then after during redevelopment. So let's look at some of it. First of all, David, did you know the 22 bus used to be a streetcar?
Woody, I did know that.
Okay, good to
I
know.
did. In fact, almost all of the low number bus lines, the electric trolley buses were streetcars at one time.
Good to know.
That might surprise you.
These things are crazy. They were the Fillmore arches and they lit up. I think you can see little light bulbs hanging from them and this glass bulb, which is also illuminated, a flagpole on top. I wrote a whole article about it if you go to sanfranciscostory.com. You scroll down, it's like almost one of the first ones I did.
Well, come on, what's the deal? Why is Fillmore Street so important that they would get
After the
these?
1906
amazing-
earthquake and fire, when downtown was burned out, Fillmore was relatively undamaged and became the major commercial corridor for the city for a while. And so the Fillmore merchants wanted to capitalize on that and built these illuminated arches across 14 intersections to
14.
I think it was 14, to brighten it up and hopefully cement Fillmore Street as the city's shopping district. It didn't quite work. And then they were scrapped during World War II for the metal. So that's the short story. This building here is the only other thing that's still around. It's 1833 Sutter Street, a little brick facade. All right.
Interesting.
Let's get into some of the details on the sides. We got a little jitney taxi here to the ferry building. A lot of businesses, podiatrists and drugstores and candy stores. A girl pushing her, I assume, sister in a little carriage on the corner. And over here, we got the sweetery. We can get candies and ice cream. And then right here, this is Billy's Cigar Store. And I know that because there's a sign that says, "This is Billy's Cigar Store." All right, David, we looked at some of these buildings that had been changed and we were bemoaning that they've been changed. This is a more positive story. 1951, the assessor documenting the transite, the asbestos shingles on this building at 2003 Pine.
So many buildings were getting redone like that, modernized with the, 60, 70-year-old gingerbread Victorians just weren't valued, and people were sold on the idea of this low maintenance transite siding or stucco or whatever.
The one next door is great. It has all the scallop shingles and details. But the good news is this has been brought back and the transite was taken off and it was restored. And actually the one next door, which had all that great shingling, lost some of it in the meantime. But it's really a success story about how you can bring these buildings back. And just back to this photo, the other thing I love about this is this African-American family here on the front steps. It really calls back to when the Western Addition was primarily an African-American neighborhood before redevelopment really took a hit, gave it a hit. So another success story, David, or another survivor story. I'm not telling you where this building is yet. Let's see if you can figure it out. Well, this sign helps. It says 17th Street Restaurant and Club. They have shuffleboard. And this guy's taking
very inviting.
Don't you want to go in, David? I want to go in. So it doesn't have an ADA entrance though. You got to step up there just to know.
Yeah. Well, it has a friendly doorman in front.
The good news is that here at the bottom of Potrero Hill, this building survives as the bottom of the hill. The club the building looks pretty much the same. It's survived pretty well. So go see some live music, David.
Yeah, I'm not ready.
Okay.
I'm quintuple vaccinated, but I'm like, I don't go see live music.
All right, last photo, and then we're going to talk to Jeremy and answer any questions. I see the chat's got like 27 chat things I haven't looked at. But here we are, 1916. We're looking at Church and 20th Street, and the work being done here being documented by John Henry Mentz, who is the United Railroads photographer, is the construction of, I believe, the J Church line, right, David, the streetcar line?
Right. This is I was thinking about this image. Something we hadn't talked about. John Henry Mentz worked for United Railroads, and the J Church line, of course, is the new Muni
Mhm.
line, only 4 years old, Muni at that point. And so I'm not 100% sure what
He's
John Henry
documenting.
Mentz was documenting here, because it wasn't the construction of the J Church line.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
they,
let's zero in and see what he actually did document, even if he didn't mean to. I love this kid with his homemade soapbox coaster, and you could tell he's totally ready to scavenge that wheel of whatever that wagon was.
absolutely. I appreciate what we would call today micromobility amongst the younger set in all these pictures. I love those kids on 16th Street, and this kid has it doesn't look as good as theirs, but I think it's going to get there.
Yeah, and I think he's a maker. I know my friend Rochelle Jacobs, who teaches maker classes at Oakland Public Schools, would love this kid because he can make his own coaster and he's looking to improve it. On the other
Didn't
side,
didn't you make your own coaster when you? We'll get to that later,
I
but
did. It did not look that good. Okay, on this side, where there's all this giant construction and hills of dirt and guys pushing on rickety trestles, here's a kid just saying, "Hey guys, what you doing?"
yeah, there
Back
was
when
no
kids
OSHA.
no, you
Right.
could just do whatever you wanted, I guess. And then this, what is up with this GQ kid? This is the best dressed child we have seen tonight. And I don't know what he's doing there, leaning on a sign in a construction zone. But all of that is secondary to a very simple thing, this fire hydrant. What is this fire hydrant, David? Why is
Absolutely.
it?
Well, Nick has mentioned it in the chat. That's the golden fire hydrant, which they are drawing water from in the construction. But that's the fire hydrant that supposedly saved the Mission District in 1906. It was the only fire hydrant that pumped water and pretty much arrested the progress of the fire from that point on. 20th Street is the end of the line for the fire across the Mission.
That's right. I have a problem though, David. We're going to cause some problems tonight because here's a picture of the golden fire hydrant being painted, which it is every April 18th. People go there in the morning and paint it gold in tribute. But that's a different fire hydrant, David.
It's different. It's got
It's got
different
the ball.
top on it for sure. The rest of it seems kind of different too. I think that the golden hydrant is a concept, Woody.
Okay.
It's
They replaced the
it
hydrant.
represents the indomitable spirit of San Francisco and how we will
Great.
still celebrate something, even if it's not the actual thing. It's
Okay.
spot where that happened. So it's good.
Well, that concludes our presentation, but don't leave. I love this. This is a little bit of accidental, maybe self-portrait of, I think this is Horace Chaffee, right, David?
Yeah, I think that's a shadow of Horace there.
Yeah, well,